You're not family today. My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, and I was just turned away from my own sister's wedding. Not forgotten, not mistakenly excluded. Deliberately told by the woman who gave birth to me that I wasn't welcome. Her exact words? Strangers aren't allowed. It sounds dramatic, right? Like the kind of thing that only happens in movies or trashy talk shows. But it happened. To me. Last Saturday, in Aspen, Colorado, at the kind of mountain resort where billionaires sip cocktails under chandeliers made of hand-blown glass. I had arrived early, wearing the emerald silk dress I'd carefully chosen. Not quite bridesmaid, not too flashy, but still elegant. I even wore heels, despite knowing I'd regret it. Clutched in my hands was a silver photo frame I'd had custom engraved with my sister Brianna's and her fiancé's names. I smiled at the woman managing the guest table, offered my name, Lauren Mitchell. I'm the bride's sister. She tapped her tablet, looked confused, tapped again. I'm sorry, she said finally. Your name's not on the list. My laugh came out light and awkward. That's a mistake. I helped design this entire wedding. I created the invitations. I worked with the printer. I even packed backup programs in my car just in case. She gave me a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Let me get the coordinator. Enter Vanessa. Clipboard, headset, perfectly calm. Lauren, right? I thought you weren't attending. I blinked. Of course I'm attending. I'm her sister. She lowered her voice. I was told the guest list is final, by your mother. And as if summoned by awkward energy, Carla Mitchell herself stepped out from behind the reception doors, my mother. In her signature navy dress coat, pearls at her neck, not a hair out of place. She looked at me as if I were someone else's problem. What's going on? She asked the coordinator as if she didn't already know. They can't find my name, I said quietly. But Her expression cut me off. You weren't invited, Lauren. You've always kept your distance. Brianna didn't want any unnecessary tension today. My breath caught. I designed this entire wedding. And we're grateful, she said smoothly. But this day is about Brianna. And frankly, you've made your choices. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Strangers aren't allowed. That's what she had said. And I realized in that moment I wasn't her daughter. Not today, not in this world she had curated so carefully. I see, I said. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just stepped back, heels clicking softly against the stone tiles as I turned around. Behind me I heard her mutter to the coordinator, just a vendor misunderstanding, but I wasn't a vendor. I was the sister, the forgotten one, and in that moment I made a promise to myself. If I was always going to be treated like a stranger, then I'd start living like one. Being quiet was my only way to exist. Long before I was denied entry to Brianna's wedding, I was denied something else, much quieter but far more damaging, a sense of belonging. Growing up in Boulder, Colorado, our family looked picture-perfect from the outside. Dad worked as a landscape architect, always bringing home sketches of gardens and structures he dreamed of building. Mom, Carla, was a former interior designer who shifted to being a full-time society mom once Brianna was born. From the start, it was clear who the star of the Mitchell family was: Brianna. 3 years older, blonde, vibrant, and magnetic. Every dance recital, every school election, every minor accomplishment she had was celebrated like she'd won an Olympic medal. You light up every room, Mom would tell her. People just gravitate toward you. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the kid who read books during recess, who painted watercolor landscapes while Brianna played soccer under the Friday night lights. My silence was never cruel, it was survival, because in a house where performance meant praise, stillness meant invisibility. I don't remember my first birthday party, but I do remember Brianna's 8th. There were ponies, Real ponies. She wore a tiara. I helped hand out goodie bags. And I remember thinking, even then, maybe if I do everything right, they'll notice me next time. But next time never came. At school, I was known as Brianna's little sister, not Lauren. Teachers would light up when they saw my last name, only to hide their surprise when I wasn't bubbly or loud. Mom used to brush my hair quickly in the mornings, eyes already on the clock or Brianna's breakfast order. "You're so easy," she'd say with a distracted smile. "You don't need much." I wanted to scream. Needing less doesn't mean I should get less. But I didn't. I smiled. I stayed quiet. Because Dad saw me. He'd sit beside me on the porch in the evenings, watching me sketch trees and birds and say things like, "You've got an eye, Lo. You see what most people miss?" He called me Lo, the only person who did. His presence was soft, grounding, and for a while it was enough. But the moment he died, hit by a drunk driver on a foggy evening, that safety disappeared, and the household that already ran on imbalance, it tipped completely. After the funeral, I stood beside Mom and Brianna, both wrapped in black coats. Mom held Brianna's hand like she might float away. She never once looked at me. So I clutched the only thing I had left, a pressed maple leaf Dad had laminated for me the autumn before. That night, while Brianna sobbed loudly in her room, Mom brought her hot cocoa and rubbed her back. I lay in the dark, silent again. Not because I wasn't crying, but because no one came to listen. I didn't realize it then, but the pattern had already begun. The louder Brianna shined, the quieter I had to become, until eventually I became a shadow. And no one ever asks shadows if they're okay. When he left, so did my place in the family. After my father died, our house didn't feel like home anymore. It was like a painting with the brightest color scraped off, leaving everything dull and uneven. But the strangest part, Mom didn't crumble. She refocused. Her grief didn't pour into photo albums or long evenings at the dining table, reminiscing with us about Dad's stories. It funneled straight into Brianna. The week after the funeral, while I sat in Dad's chair sketching a drawing of his favorite hiking trail from memory, Mom was already on the phone with a local pageant coach, signing Brianna up for a junior modeling program. "She needs something uplifting," she said. And maybe that was true, but I needed something too. I just didn't know how to ask for it. School became my refuge, art class especially. I remember sitting in the back corner of Mrs. Jensen's classroom, charcoal pencil in hand, recreating a photo of a fox in the snow. No one told me I had to stay after school. I just didn't want to go home. When Brianna got the lead in the school play, Mom invited her coworkers, booked flowers, and treated it like a Broadway debut. When I won second place in a district-wide art competition, Mom's reaction was, "Oh, that's nice. Maybe we'll hang it in the laundry room." She said it with a chuckle, like it was a joke. But my heart didn't get it. The imbalance grew sharper as we got older. Brianna dated quarterbacks, cheer captains, and once, the son of a local congressman. Mom glowed every time she introduced him. Me. I had 2 quiet relationships in high school, both with fellow artists. Neither ever came to our house, because I knew what Mom would say. "Why don't you date someone, a bit more impressive?" But I was used to it by then. Used to hearing, "Brianna's doing a beauty shoot this weekend," instead of, "How's your sketchbook coming along?" Used to buying my own school supplies while Mom spent $300 on Brianna's homecoming dress. Used to waiting until everyone left the house to cry. Then came the college decisions. I got into RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, on a partial scholarship. I was ecstatic. It was one of the top design schools in the country. My guidance counselor cried when I told her. When I told Mom, she smiled faintly and said, "That's sweet, honey, but it's so far away. Don't you want to be near us?" Brianna didn't hesitate. "That's not even a real college," she scoffed. You're just gonna learn to color inside the lines? That night, I cried in the shower. Because it wasn't just about college, it was about being consistently unseen, but I went anyway. Packed my bags, left Colorado, and tried to build a life on the belief that maybe distance could equal freedom. I didn't know then that even thousands of miles away, I would still be orbiting the same sun, Brianna, the golden child. And no matter how far I flew, Mom's gravity would always pull me back. Success doesn't matter when no one's clapping for you. College was the first place I ever felt real oxygen in my lungs. RSD was filled with people like me, quiet, observant, wildly expressive in ways that didn't require noise. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Brianna's sister. I was just Lauren, and that was enough. And that? By sophomore year, I was already freelancing for local brands, designing logos and packaging. I worked hard, slept little, and poured myself into every line, every typeface. My professors noticed. Clients referred me. My work started gaining traction. By the time I graduated, I landed a junior designer role at a boutique creative agency in Denver. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I signed the lease to my first apartment with hands that trembled, not from fear, but disbelief. After years of being invisible, I was finally building something visible, tangible, valuable, but success, it turns out, doesn't soften the silence from the people you most want to impress. I called Mom the day I got promoted to art director, 2 years earlier than anyone expected. My voice brimmed with excitement. Mom, guess what? I got the promotion, full-time lead on the Thompson Hotels account. There was a pause. That's nice, honey, she said. Brianna just got engaged. He proposed at Lake Como. Can you believe it? My chest deflated like a punctured balloon. Wow, that's great for her, I replied, trying to smile through the phone. She kept talking about the ring, the private chef dinner, how his parents own a winery in Napa. She never asked who Thompson Hotels were, never asked what the promotion meant, never asked how I felt. At family dinners, it was the same. I'd fly in from Denver, bring thoughtful gifts, like the hand-painted ceramic set I found at a craft market in Santa Fe. Brianna would show up late, toss her designer purse on the table, and Mom would gush over her shoes. Did you see the house they're buying? That BMW is so sleek, Ethan really knows how to provide. You know, Lauren, you should really think about settling down soon too. I wanted to scream. I'm not a failure just because I'm single. My value isn't tied to a ring. But instead, I nodded, smiled, chewed slowly. The comparisons never stopped. When I hosted a small gallery exhibit featuring my work, Mom said, "Oh, that's cute. Like a little hobby show?" When I sent her the link to an interview I did for a design blog, she texted back, "I don't really get that stuff. But I'm sure it's nice." Nice. That word haunted me. It was the polite knife Mom used when she didn't care enough to dig deeper. One Thanksgiving, after a long silence during dinner, Brianna leaned in and said with a smirk, "You always were the artsy one, like the weird one in the family. But hey, we need creative people, right?" Mom laughed like it was funny. I laughed too, because that's what you do when you're used to performing discomfort as politeness. I tried again and again to break through, to be seen as more than a contrast to Brianna, to be celebrated even quietly for what I built. But every time I reached out, the response was the same. That's nice. And I was reminded again and again that in their world, I was never the headline. Maybe this time they'll see me. When Brianna got engaged to Ethan Halstead, it was like Mom had finally won the lottery. Ethan came from old money. His family owned vineyards in Napa and were part of every social club Mom had ever tried and failed to get into. Suddenly, Carla Mitchell had a new title she flaunted like designer perfume, Mother of the Bride. There were group chats, mood boards, venue tours, dress fittings. It was like planning royalty, and I was on the outside again, at least at first. One afternoon during a family dinner where most of the conversation revolved around Ethan's family's vineyard party schedule, I offered casually, "If you need help with the wedding materials, that's what I do." Brianna blinked. "Oh, right, you're still doing design stuff?" Mom jumped in. "That might save us some money." It wasn't enthusiasm, it was convenience. But I clung to it. Maybe this is my way in. Maybe if I pour myself into this, they'll finally see me. Within a week, I was building full branding for the wedding, from invitations and RSVP sites to place cards, menu designs, custom wine labels, and a floral monogram. I worked nights, weekends, searched for specialty paper vendors, negotiated with a luxury letterpress printer I'd built connections with through a former client, hand-illustrated floral motifs that matched the aspen winter palette they wanted, deep emerald, ivory, soft gold. I created 5 different mood boards, complete with font pairings, layout mock-ups, and sample color schemes. I even designed a custom wax seal with Ethan and Brianna's initials intertwined, a subtle nod to their proposal location in Lake Como. I showed Brianna the first round of drafts via Zoom. She was distracted, sipping wine, scrolling on her phone. "Can the font be, more elegant? Like something you'd see on a Chanel bag?" I reworked the layout. Then Mom chimed in. "We think gold foil would be classier than silver." So I changed that too. Again and again. "You're a professional, right? We just want it to feel expensive." Each round of feedback cut deeper, not because of the critique, but because it always came with that tone, that dismissive edge. Like I was lucky to be allowed in the room. When I sent the final proof to the printer, it was perfection, luxury paper stock. Gold foil embossing, hand-drawn borders, every detail meticulously aligned with their vision. I drove 90 minutes to pick up the first box myself, just to ensure nothing went wrong. I even tied ribbon samples around the test batch to match with Brianna's table decor. When I delivered the final product to Mom's house, she barely glanced at them. "They'll do," she said. But Brianna posted a photo on Instagram of the invites later that night. No credit. No tag, the caption, "Obsessed with our invites." Ethan's mom helped us pick the gold. I didn't comment, didn't correct it. I just told myself, "You're not doing this for attention. You're doing this for belonging." Because even after everything, part of me still believed, if I made something beautiful enough, maybe I'd finally be enough too. The signs were there. I just refused to read them. 3 months before the wedding, I was updating the wedding website I'd built for Brianna and Ethan. I had just uploaded the RSVP feature when I clicked over to the family section to test the new carousel. It listed Carla Mitchell, Ethan's parents, a few cousins, and even Brianna's college roommates. But not me. No Lauren, no photo, no mention. I told myself it was a simple oversight, so I texted Brianna, "Hey, I noticed I'm not listed on the family section of the site. Want me to add a line about me?" Her reply came back an hour later. "Oh, weird. Yeah, feel free to add whatever you want." I should have known. Then came the wedding invites. Not the ones I designed. I'd seen those 100 times by then. But when the physical ones started arriving at people's homes, I never got one. At first, I laughed. Why would I need one? I made them. But as time passed, something gnawed at me. I wanted a copy, for myself, as a keepsake. So I called Mom. "I never got an invitation," I said lightly. "It's silly, but I'd love to have one to save." There was a pause. "Brianna assumed you didn't need one. You're not a guest, per se. You're helping. Not a guest." That stung more than I expected. When I asked Brianna later, she said, "You don't need an invite. You're family." Technically. As if my status needed a legal footnote. Weeks passed and things got busier. I helped design signage for the welcome dinner, created monogram napkins for the bar, and adjusted the seating chart, which I hadn't seen in full until I needed to finalize the layout. When I opened the guest spreadsheet, I scanned the tables, then scanned again. My name wasn't there, not even under miscellaneous. I triple-checked spelling, searched for Lauren, checked every table group. Nothing. I called Brianna. "Hey, I don't see my name on the seating chart." "Is that a mistake?" There was a long pause, then, "Oh, I figured you'd be floating? Like helping Vanessa coordinate, maybe checking on setup?" "I'm not your coordinator." "Vanessa is." "I just meant, you're always around during setup. It didn't make sense to assign you a table." "You didn't think I'd sit down? Eat?" More silence. Then, almost irritated, "Look, I'll figure something out. Maybe you can sit with Ethan's friends?" That night, I stared at my monitor for a long time. The wedding I had designed, the materials I'd perfected, all now felt like stage props for a performance I'd never been cast in, and yet I still moved forward. I bought a dress, emerald green, elegant but not too bold. Spent hours finding a gift, a vintage silver frame engraved with their wedding date. Planned a mini emergency kit with tape, scissors, backup menus, even safety pins. Maybe this is just stress, I told myself. Maybe things will feel different on the day. But deep down, I already knew. The wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a ceremony of exclusion, and I was the uninvited architect of it all. I created everything. But I wasn't allowed inside. The morning of the wedding, Aspen looked like something out of a snow globe, white dusting the rooftops, crisp mountain air, and the faint hum of classical music as vendors prepped the Blue Ridge Chalet for the event of the season. I woke early, made coffee, laid out everything I needed. My dress, a small makeup bag, emergency supplies, backup programs, and a wedding gift. I tried to feel excited. Tried to believe that maybe, once I arrived and everything came together, they'd look at me differently. Not as the sister who distanced herself, not as the background character, but as someone who mattered. I arrived at the venue 3 hours early, just as the florists were bringing in arrangements and photographers were setting up. Inside the grand entrance hall, I approached a woman with a clipboard. "Hi, I'm Lauren Mitchell, the bride's sister. I designed all the printed materials and wanted to check if anything needs attention." She looked confused. "You're the designer? I thought you were remote." "I'm her sister," I repeated, offering a polite smile that felt strained. "Oh, everything looks great. I think Vanessa has everything under control upstairs." I nodded and walked past the velvet ropes toward the ballroom. My work was everywhere. The large seating chart stood on an easel, each name in perfect metallic script. Custom menus rested atop every plate. The cocktail napkins bore the gold monogram I had hand-designed. For a brief second, pride rose in my chest. "This is mine. I did this." Then I heard it, laughter coming from the bridal suite upstairs. I made my way to the room where Brianna and her bridesmaids were getting ready. I hesitated, then knocked gently. The door opened just a crack. One of Brianna's college friends peeked out, blinking in surprise. "Oh, Lauren, right?" "Yes." "Just wanted to check if Brianna needs anything." Before she could respond, my mother's face appeared in the doorway. "Lauren, what are you doing here so early?" "I came to help. I thought maybe—" "We have it under control," she interrupted. "Brianna's busy with her makeup right now. Maybe go check the signage or make sure the place cards are in order." I swallowed hard. "Can I at least say hello?" She sighed, stepping into the hallway, lowering her voice. "She's very stressed, Lauren. Today needs to be perfect. Don't make it about you." Before I could respond, from inside the room I heard Brianna's voice. "Is she gone?" "I don't want any drama today." I froze. My mother didn't deny it, didn't soften it. She just adjusted her pearl earring and said, Just focus on the setup, okay? I nodded slowly, feeling heat rise behind my eyes. Sure. Back in the reception hall, guests began arriving. I slipped into the garden ceremony area, sitting near the back. No one asked why I wasn't with family. No one noticed. The ceremony was beautiful. Brianna walked down the aisle with our mother on her arm. Mom cried. Not because I wasn't moved, but because I had nothing left to give. After the ceremony, as the wedding party disappeared for photos, guests began heading into the ballroom for the reception. I joined the line, clutching my bag and the frame I planned to gift. When it was my turn, the attendant asked, "Name?" "Lauren Mitchell." He scrolled, then scrolled again. "I'm sorry, I don't see that name on the list." I blinked. "There must be a mistake. I'm the bride's sister." He flagged over Vanessa. They spoke in hushed tones, occasionally glancing at me. Vanessa approached, her face unreadable. "I'm sorry, Lauren. Your name isn't on the approved guest list." I felt my stomach drop. "That's impossible. I can only allow guests cleared by the bride and her mother." My voice trembled. This has to be a misunderstanding. Just then I saw my mother approaching. "Is there a problem?" she asked coolly. "They're saying I'm not on the list," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me the way you'd look at a stranger who spilled wine on your dress. "Did you really think you were invited?" "Mom, I'm your daughter." She leaned in slightly, her voice sharp but quiet. "You haven't been part of this family in any meaningful way for years." Brianna wanted today to be drama-free. I stared at her. All the hours I'd poured into this wedding, all the designs, all the second chances I had given them in my mind, gone. "I created everything you're using today," I whispered. "And we appreciate that," she said. Then she looked me in the eye and said the words that would burn in my memory. "Strangers aren't allowed." I stepped back. Guests were watching now, whispering. I could have cried, could have begged, could have screamed. But instead I said, "Then I'll live like a stranger." And I turned, walked away, through the marble lobby, past the fountain, out into the snow. Behind me I heard her say to the coordinator, "Just a misunderstanding with a vendor." A vendor. Not a daughter, not even a guest, just a tool, used, then discarded. And as the heavy oak doors closed behind me, I felt something shatter. But I also felt, for the first time, the faint stir of something else. Freedom. When everything breaks, you can finally see the cracks. The cold hit me like a slap the moment I stepped outside the Blue Ridge Chalet. It wasn't just the wind sweeping off the mountains or the snow soaking through my heels. It was the way the silence wrapped around me, thick and final. The wedding music drifted faintly through the doors behind me, but I didn't look back. I made it halfway to the parking lot before my legs gave up. Not dramatically, just a slow collapse onto a stone bench near a decorative fountain. I sat there, shivering in silk and mascara, clutching the wedding gift no one would open. The numbness came first, then the memories. My 16th birthday, forgotten because Brianna had a cheer competition. My high school graduation, Mom telling her friends how Brianna had a harder time losing Tom, as if I didn't grieve too. College move-in day, Mom hugged me at the curb and rushed back to a sorority event Brianna needed her for. One after another, they surfaced. Moments I had minimized, rationalized, buried. Now, with no more performance left in me, they marched through my mind like proof. It hadn't just been one bad day. It had been a lifetime of conditional love, and I had mistaken scraps for affection. I didn't cry. Not yet. I sat there in that stupid emerald dress, watching the water spill from the fountain like it was mocking me. People passed. A few gave me strange looks. No one stopped. My phone was heavy in my hand. I stared at the screen until the name came into focus. Naomi Lewis, my old college roommate. my closest friend. The one person who'd always said, "If they don't treat you like family, that's on them." I called. "Lauren?" Her voice cracked through the silence like a lifeline. "They didn't let me in," I whispered. "What? Where are you?" "Outside, Aspen." I can't drive right now." "I'm coming," she said immediately. "Stay there. I'm 30 minutes out." While I waited, I didn't move. Not because I was frozen, but because I knew, deeply, terrifyingly, that any movement might shake loose the tears I'd been holding for 28 years. And when Naomi's car finally pulled up, when she wrapped me in a thick coat and said, "You don't ever have to explain, I already know," the sobs came like a storm. That night, back at her place in a small cabin outside Aspen, Naomi put me in sweatpants, made tea, and handed me tissues like she'd been training for this. "I designed everything," I choked. "The invitations, the menus, even the napkins. And I wasn't good enough to be inside." Naomi knelt beside the couch, gripping my hand. "Lauren, listen to me. This is not about you being good enough. This is about them being broken." Her voice was firm, grounded, like my father's used to be. The next morning, she gave me a choice. "I booked a therapy consult for this afternoon. You don't have to go, but I think you should." "I don't need therapy," I muttered. "I'm just tired." Naomi didn't flinch. "You're not tired. You're emotionally starved." "And what you've gone through? It's not normal family drama. It's trauma." That afternoon, I sat in a warm, softly lit room with a woman named Dr. Brenner. She wore earth tones and had eyes that didn't blink too fast. "Tell me what brought you here," she said. And I told her, not just about the wedding, but about everything. She listened, took notes, then said gently, "Lauren, what you're describing is a narcissistic family system. Brianna is the golden child. You're the scapegoat." My mouth opened. I hadn't heard the terms before, but they felt accurate. Like puzzle pieces snapping into place. You were never going to be seen, because they needed someone invisible to prop up the illusion. "Was it something I did?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Something I didn't do?" She shook her head. "No, children don't earn mistreatment. They're just assigned roles based on the parents' dysfunction." That night, I didn't sleep, but I felt something I hadn't in years. Not hope, not peace, but clarity. And sometimes that's where healing begins. If they won't see you, build a life that reflects who you are. In the weeks after the wedding, I fell into what Dr. Brenner called a grief phase. But it wasn't grief for them. It was grief for the version of me that had spent decades chasing scraps of love. I took time off work. Naomi handled my calls. I deleted Instagram, stopped answering messages from relatives, wondering where I'd disappeared to. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't performing. I wasn't trying to earn anyone's approval. I was just breathing. Dr. Brenner suggested building small routines, morning walks, journaling, coloring, not for design, but for peace. She said, "You've been designing everything for others. What if you designed a life for yourself?" That idea took root. I moved out of my apartment in Denver. It had too many ghosts, too many memories of phone calls that ended in disappointment, dinners I left early to cry in rideshare cars. I found a sunlit one-bedroom in Boulder, not far from where I grew up, but worlds away from the version of me that once lived there. I painted the walls sage green, hung prints by artists I loved, framed a quote that Dr. Brenner had shared during a session. "Love doesn't require shrinking." And then there was Jason. We met at a local coffee shop. He was photographing a new interior for a boutique hotel I had once designed the logo for. He noticed the notebook I was sketching in, struck up a conversation, and within 15 minutes, we were talking about fonts like old friends. He didn't ask about my family. He asked about my ideas, my vision, my process. It was startling. No subtle comparisons, no suggestions I'd be more like anyone. Just space to be myself. We started dating slowly. Hikes, bookstore browsing, quiet dinners where he'd say things like, "I like the way you notice things. You don't rush past beauty." He never said I was too quiet. Never said you should call your mom. Never asked me to justify my distance from my family. Instead, he said, "You deserve peace. However you get there." With time, my business grew. I left the boutique agency and launched my own branding studio, focused on small businesses led by women, artists, and underrepresented voices. I built something honest, intentional, mine, and for once, I didn't share every success with my mother. I didn't seek validation from someone who had made it clear I'd never earn it. Because here's what I had finally learned. When someone refuses to see your worth, it's not your job to scream louder. It's your sign to walk away and build where you are valued. And slowly, beautifully, that's what I was doing. With the right people, you don't have to earn your place, you already belong. Jason wasn't a grand romantic gesture kind of guy. He didn't show up with roses or make sweeping declarations. What he brought was rarer, consistency, curiosity, and calm. When I told him about the wedding, about being turned away, the years of feeling like a placeholder in my own family, he didn't flinch. He didn't say, "I'm sure they didn't mean it," or try to justify their behavior. He just listened. Then he said, "That sounds like a system built to erase you. I'm glad you got out." The first time he came to my new apartment, he noticed the framed quote above my desk. "Love doesn't require shrinking." He smiled and said, "That feels like your whole energy now." And maybe he was right, because for the first time I wasn't editing myself, not toning down my weirdness, not avoiding opinions, not performing gratitude for crumbs. With Jason, I could say, "I'm not going to that family brunch." And he'd reply, "Totally fair. Want to go to the botanical garden instead?" With Jason, silence wasn't awkward. It was space to breathe. We started working on creative projects together, branding shoots for local artists, portfolio videos for nonprofits. He loved capturing texture. I loved creating context. We weren't just dating, we were collaborating. And slowly I felt something crack open inside me. Not a rush of blind optimism, but a steady confidence, a knowing that I didn't have to prove anything to be loved. One night we were sitting on my couch, sketchbooks between us, mugs of tea on the table. Jason said, "You know what I admire about you?" I raised an eyebrow. "That I always refill the tea without asking?" He grinned. "That too, but mostly that you didn't let being invisible make you small. You turned it into something." My throat tightened, because he didn't say you overcame it. He said you turned it into something. That's what artists do. We take pain and alchemize it. We turn absence into presence, wounds into windows. With him, I was learning that love wasn't supposed to make you earn it. It wasn't a prize. It wasn't a performance. It was this. A gentle, daily affirmation that you are enough, just as you are. The Lauren who walked away from that wedding. She thought everything had shattered, but really it was the first time she saw herself clearly, not through the eyes of people who would never accept her, but through her own, and through someone like Jason, who never asked her to be anyone else. Sometimes walking away is how you finally come home to yourself. For most of my life, I believed that love had to be earned, that being good, helpful, humble, quiet would eventually lead to recognition. That one day, my mother and sister would turn to me and say, "We see you. We're proud of you. You belong." But that day never came. And the more I waited, the more I realized something heartbreaking but freeing. Some people don't want to see you. Not because you're unworthy, but because your visibility threatens their illusion. I wasn't invisible because I lacked value. I was invisible because I refused to play the role they wrote for me. It took being rejected at the door, literally and metaphorically, for me to understand. Belonging doesn't require permission, and family isn't always biological. My family of origin had made it clear over and over that love came with conditions. Speak a certain way, don't disrupt the image, don't shine too brightly. Don't need too much, they weren't going to change, so I did. Through therapy, through silence, through self-work and stillness, I began replacing the old questions with better ones. Instead of, why don't they love me? I asked, why am I still asking them to? Instead of, what's wrong with me? I asked, what have I accepted that I never deserved? And the answers brought clarity. I deserved softness. I deserved to be listened to be celebrated for my gifts, not minimized for someone else's comfort. I deserved to speak and not be shushed. To take up space, not apologize for it. I learned that cutting off contact isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. That boundaries aren't punishments, they're instructions for how to treat me. And most of all, I learned that freedom doesn't come from being included, it comes from no longer needing to be. Today, I don't spend my energy trying to be invited. I build rooms where I'm wanted. I build tables where everyone has a seat, especially the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones who grew up like me. Because sometimes the family you're born into cannot see your worth, but the one you create. That family loves without measuring, without hierarchy, without fear. To anyone who has felt unwanted by the very people meant to love them, you are not alone, you are not broken, and you don't need permission to begin again. You don't have to go back to pain just because it's familiar. You can build new roots, new rhythms, and most powerfully, a new definition of love. Your story matters. Tell it. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, like no matter what you did, it was never quite enough, I want you to know this: you are not alone, and you are not too sensitive. You are simply someone who deserves to be loved without conditions. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you were told you had to love because staying was hurting more than leaving? Have you ever redefined what family means to you? Share your story in the comments, not just for me, but for someone else who might need to read your words and feel seen. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories about healing and boundaries, and send this video to someone who might be searching for their own voice. Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose yourself.